try to understand that, honestly, the more you learn, like, you're going to understand that knowledge really means nothing, right? The reason why we learn is to see how small we are and how big God is. That's the only reason why we learn. Like, knowledge means nothing. So if we're not taking the time to really reflect on what we have learned, it's just as good as taking philosophy, right? What's the difference between philosophy and theology? Theology becomes theology when the center is God, and we're moving towards that direction. We're using our mind in order to get closer to God, not to just know stuff. Versus philosophy is, why does things happen? You know? And then just think about it. It's a mental exercise. Okay, let's get to today's reading. Like I said, today should be smooth, no surprises. There's a quiz. I don't know what's that. Matthew, chapter 12, verse 1 through 8. How'd you know?
I'll be praying with them.
Okay, alright. So randomly I'm going to pick somebody. Who is that random person?
David.
Yeah, right.
It must be David.
David, I was going to say David.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm out for he told me to do it. I know.
That person.
How are you? Say your name, tell me what you do. It's okay. You're lying. We can't edit this. That's what you do.
At about that time, Jesus was walking through some of the grain fields on the Sabbath. The disciples were hungry, so they began breaking off some of the breads and grain and eating them. But some of the Pharisees saw them do it and protested. "Look, your disciples are breaking the law and harvesting grain on the Sabbath." Jesus said to them, "Haven't you read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went to the house of God, and he and his companions broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread. And only the priests are allowed to eat. And haven't you read in the law of Moses that the priest on duty in the temple may work on the Sabbath? I tell you, there is one here who is even greater than the temple. But you would have condemned my innocent disciples if you knew the meaning of the scripture. I want you to show mercy and not offer sacrifices, for the Son of Man is the Lord, even over the Sabbath."
It's not anything.
Can somebody summarize that? Yes, ma'am.
The law is not absolute over like human need or the service of God.
Good. But like a summary.
So the Pharisees basically said that when the disciples and Jesus were going to go to the garden of like Sabbath, they said that they were prohibited because the law doesn't allow that. And then Jesus said that basically the human need is more important and God is like, near the end he said something about even Jesus is the Lord of Sabbath, even if the law prohibits certain things from that. Even if the law prohibits reading from that.
Very good. So we know what happened, right? In the field, you guys follow me?
Yep.
Our Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ is walking in the field. You guys see that? Yeah. As he's walking, what day is it?
This is Sunday.
It's not today, I'm saying.
The Sabbath.
It's the Sabbath. Which day is the Sabbath? Saturday. See, what day is the Sabbath?
Whatever you want.
Sometime Monday, sometime Wednesday. Is it? What day is the Sabbath?
Saturday.
You sure?
Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. It's about that.
Huh?
Sabbath
means seventh day, so start counting.
In Spanish, Saturday is Sabbath. Sabbath.
Sunday is
Alright, so we're talking the seventh day. Start counting.
Sunday.
First day is Sunday?
Oh, that
Sunday
is,
will
it
be
is, it
down.
would be
Yeah.
Sunday because it said on the seventh day he rested.
Yeah, but the first day is
Sunday.
You sure?
Sunday.
Yeah.
okay. Sunday,
America been tripping me up.
Monday.
Sunday,
Sunday, Monday.
Monday.
The lunas.
You know that's what it is, right? By the way, in English, you guys understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like when we talking about Sunday, it was the day of the sun. Monday was the day of the moon. Tuesday was the day of the.
You trying to do something there?
But these were gods that they were worshiping, and then they would remember, like, all right, we gotta worship this god, we gotta worship this god, and that's what they were doing. And they're names of different gods, and they just adopted it. Whereas, like, even in Amharic, like there's like names associated with it, right? So like the Amharic is not, it doesn't do it any justice, but like when we go into the is Sanwi, right, means like the second day, right? From Sandaya, which means two, right? And then we have Salus, which means like the third day, Rabu, and so on and so forth. And then we have Adami. Why do we say Adami for Saturday?
Sunday.
Huh? Okay, yeah. What is that about? What is it like? Makada means to be before, right? Or,
Before the
No, to go ahead. You got it?
Macadamia.
oh no, so generally when we're saying we we're talking about
Okay.
before,
Okay.
right?
Before the new,
Huh?
before the new, like, the
Not
next
quite, no. Think about this. That was very wrong. I just wanted, like, I've heard a lot of answers before, and I just wanted, this is what wrong looks like. So when we talk about before, what do you mean? Like before? Before of what? That's also a very wrong answer. So what happened is, like, in the Old Testament, when they're thinking about the Sabbath, they don't really, like, they weren't saying on Saturday, they weren't saying today is the before one, because for them that was the real Sabbath, right? And Sabbath is the day when God rested, right? And we're going to talk about what that means, but it's important for everybody to understand. Now in the New Testament, what happened is Christ was crucified on Friday and resurrected on Sunday. So, and then all in the early church, we know that all the people, like the disciples, they were gathered together and celebrating on Sunday. So our forefathers said in the New Testament, our new Sabbath is on Sunday. By the way, just to let you know, the number 8 in the Bible means renewal. Like, it's a renewal, right? 7 is completion, and then like once the 7th is over, you begin again, like day 1, right? But if you kept counting, it's number 8. So if you notice, like in the book of Noah, there's 8 people who are in the ark. You guys notice that? What it means is it's a renewal of a generation, because that one, the one before, was complete. It was done. They were sinners. Now we're going to start the cycle again. So there's like 8 signifying a new beginning. You guys see the connection? So now this being on Sunday is signifying the 8th day, which means it's a day of renewal, a new beginning. You see? You guys see how it works? A little bit. You guys, I mean, this is not like part of what we're talking about. But so now when we talk about Sunday is the new Sabbath, we have a new beginning. We have a new start. So it became our Sabbath in the New Testament. So if we're calling Sunday Sabbath, if we're calling Sunday Sabbath, guess what we started calling Saturday? The one before.
Sabbath before.
Edami. Why? Because it was the first Sabbath. You see what I'm saying? You guys see how that works? A little bit? You look very confused. I like that, honestly.
I think I kind of zoned out a little bit, that's probably why.
No, it's fine. So Adami means before. The Sabbath used to be celebrated on Saturday. Because Christ resurrected and died and resurrected on Sunday, we celebrate the Sabbath on Sunday now. So now we call Saturday Adami because it was the first Sabbath, and we call Sunday like the Sabbath now. Right? It's our Sabbath. Yes, sir.
I'm assuming Ehud is like Ahadu.
Yes, the first day, yes. Very good. Yes, sir.
So like, if Sundays considered the Sabbath, like, does that mean like we're not supposed to work? Because I know like for the Jews, like.
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
We're gonna get into that. Any other questions? Now, well, okay, so let's get into it, and then I'll get into the paper at that point. So when we read Genesis, the first 6 days are allocated for God creating, right? And each day He created something, and He said it was good. It was good. It was good. It was good. It was good, right? Seventh day, it said He rested. It never said He stopped working. A lot of people think rested means stop working. It never said He stopped working. It said He rested. What did He rest from? He rested from creation. It was a time for Him to reflect and witness, right, and assert how good His creation was. It was a time of reflection. Rested means He's seeing the good work. He's recognizing the good work. Do you guys see? Yes, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, the commandment to rest was given for man, right? Man needed a commandment. The commandment didn't need people, but man is the one who needed the commandment. Why? If you guys remember in the time of when the Ten Commandments was given to Moses, of course, this is where the commandment says honor the Sabbath, right? What was happening at the time when Moses was receiving the commandments? What was happening at that time?
Marching out of Egypt.
Yes, but what were the Israelites doing? You guys remember?
They were worshiping something.
Yes. So what happened is they just got rescued, like just happened. You know what I mean? It just happened, you know. So they were all like, okay, we got rescued, and Moses was like, all right, I'm gonna go talk to God and thank Him and all this stuff, right? Like wait right here, like this is great. Imagine. So they've been like slaves for that long, and they got like, you know, all that, like the water just like, you know what I mean? Like wow, like you know what I mean? Like you just witness all this stuff, and it's amazing, right? So they're about to like really worship to God. When they get there, Moses is up on the mountains talking to God and praying for 40 days. In the meantime, they're like, we have to worship something. Aaron is like, yeah, can we wait? Like Moses is coming because he's the guy that saved them. Like, all right, and then I feel bad for Aaron, because he's trying to figure stuff out. They're like, no, like we have to worship, and then they started like taking out the jewels and they were threw it down and like let's worship that. Right? No, it was weird. It was very weird. It got so weird that to them, how they please God is by performing sexual acts. And they think that by doing these things, God is pleased with them. And in fact, that's how they thought like rain and stuff would come and fertility would come. Is when He sees this, he would be pleasured. And and things would happen. So they had a very sick mind. Like after this holy action, their act was extremely wicked, extremely horrible. So rest means stop doing anything. Why? Because they can't stop sinning. Rest from your sins. It wasn't meant to say cease work or don't do anything. It was to say stop sinning. Because all they can do is sin. God, all He could do is good. You see the difference? He rested because He had to recognize His good creation. Man, on the other hand, all he could do was sin. And like, you need a day just to rest. Because if you're going to do anything, you're going to sin. You're a horrible person. Not like that, but their sin was just like, it was just too much. So let's try a different technique, At least once, reflect on the bad things that you have done. Reflect on your sins. Reflect on all the things you've done. So the Sabbath, even now, is a day of reflection. It's a day to look at our lives and say, I have sinned so much. Let me repent. Let me come. Let me be in communion with Christ. Right? It's a day for us to really work on our spiritual life. That is what it means to honor the Sabbath. Each time there's a commandment, we're going to get into all this stuff, and I'm just kind of, going by what we've been talking about, but each time God sets a rule, don't just look at the rule. That's the biggest problem that we have. We look at the intent of the rule. And that was the problem of the Pharisees. For example, when the Pharisees honored the Sabbath, they would not do anything. They would cease work, even though they never said that, right? And that, like, even today, like, they have rules and stuff like that of, like, the things they can do and the things they can't do. Even Orthodox Jews, which means the Jews who follow the Bible to the teeth, or I shouldn't say the Bible, their version of the Torah or the Old Testament. There are things, for example, they can't use electricity, right? So, like, even to turn on the light, it has to be with, like, oil, candles, and all this stuff. And that's what they believe, which is what they believe. But there's the intent of what God said. And if you read the Bible, nowhere in the Old Testament does it go specific enough to tell you how to do what and when to do what. It says honor the Sabbath. Right? The details of everything that we find the Pharisees trying to enforce on the people was something they created on their own. Like, most of the things that we see the Pharisees saying, how can they do that? And throughout the Bible, it's not just one or two places. Most of the things that the Pharisees are trying to challenge Christ, or you see them having a conversation with each other, are things they created on their own. Saying this is how we really honor God. Forgetting the intent of the rule and trying to come up with something else. Let me give you an example. I know I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Holy Communion. Holy Communion. In Holy Communion, the intent is to be in communion with Christ. Right? It is one of the 5 pillars of the church, one of the 7 sacraments of the church as well. And within this sacrament that we have received, God, because He was united with the flesh, died on the cross for us. And when He died, He offered His body so we can eat it and drink it, just as is written in John chapter 6, verse 53. He said, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will not have eternal life within you. It's not symbolic. It's not a metaphor. It's not simile. It is literal. Unless we eat His flesh and drink His blood, we cannot have eternal life. How is this done? Through the act of liturgy, or kaddasi. So this is meant to help us be in communion with Christ, so that we can be one with Christ. This is the reason why He died. We took that and we legalized it. Now we said, here's something holy, how can we make it more holy? Right? And the conversation began of doing things. Now, I'm not saying we should have followed the instructions of what our fathers tell us, whatever, but that's not the point of Holy Communion. If all we're thinking about Holy Communion is, I gotta do this, I gotta make sure I wear the right thing, and I can't touch water, and I can't change my clothes, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. If that's what we're thinking about, that's maybe 1% of the whole goal. If we're not thinking about how we can really connect with Christ and how we're appearing before the actual flesh and blood of Christ, if we're not thinking about that, we've forgotten the actual purpose of Holy Communion. There's nothing wrong with rules. There's nothing wrong with adding rules in order to really understand how holy these things are. But if all we're thinking about the rules, if all we're thinking about is the rules instead of what is present in front of it, we've missed the point. And this is true even in, let's say, YOTC. We come up with a lot of rules and regulations and stuff like that, right? Each rule is designed, it's necessary. Rules are necessary because people don't know how to follow it, right? If you don't have any rules, people just do whatever they want. So rules is extremely important. But the problem becomes when we look at the rule and we forget about the intent of the rule. You guys see what I'm talking about? For example, we have a rule of saying if people don't take courses, let's say we make up a rule like that, right? Now that rule is important. But if somebody is trying to follow the rule, taking a whole bunch of courses somewhere else and really confessing or misses a class for confession, let's say that. Misses a class for confession. Which one is better? Course or confession? If we look at the rules and say, no, you didn't come to class so you can't be a part of this, we're missing the point. The whole point of taking courses is so we can take confession. You see? So that we can take Holy Communion. We should rejoice when people are missing class to do confession. We should rejoice. If this room is empty because we all have taken confession, perfect. With that being said, try to schedule your days for other timings when there's no conflict. But honestly though, we miss the point, and we do this a lot. This is human beings in general. There's a rule, and the rule is supposed to help us get closer to Christ. But the rule becomes a distraction when we forget about the intent of the rule. No rule is bad on its own. Every rule is great. It's amazing, right? But if that's all we're thinking about, or we forget about the intent, we forgot. Let's keep going. Or let's start. Let's start. So, our Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ, He's walking the fields. I already did this demonstration, I felt like. Right? He's walking the fields. And His disciples are extremely hungry. What day is it? Sabbath. Both in the Bible and today. See how that works? So the day is the Sabbath. The disciples are hungry. It's the fields. There's, food. They grab and they start eating. They're hungry. Pharisees are there. You see what they're doing? You see? No. What are they doing? So they go. So they say they go to Jesus. I'm sorry, and then they say, "Do you see what they're doing? You see what they're doing?" And then He goes, "Yes." And He's like, "How can they take apart because you gotta break the grain or whatever, you gotta take it away. They're working on a Sabbath. Oh my gosh, stop them." They missed the point. Now, there's several things to look at. Let's unpack this. Number one, Jesus walking through the field symbolizes how Christ hovers over this world and sees us. He's always, the field. Most of the time when you guys start talking about field in the Bible, when you guys read that kind of stuff, notice that it usually symbolizes either the heart or the world. Most of the time. And in this case, we're talking about the world. So Christ is hovering. You know how you hover over? Hovering, looking over. They don't have to be word by word, by the way. Yeah. Sometimes I just feel like I need to fill in the blank, so I just provide it.
So He examines us, basically?
Yeah, He looks over. Walking through the field means he's watching us. He's watching us. I didn't think it was gonna be a conversation. Oh, you really taking notes. Then you're looking at the time to see what's we got left. Alright. Greens, in this example, symbolizes salvation. Any questions? Anybody at all? Anybody got questions?
Why can't they just symbolize grain? Why can't it just be grain? It's just grain.
What do you mean?
Why do they have to? Because when I read it, I understand it better when I just think that they're just grain. They were just
Oh, why is there a symbol and all that?
Yeah.
Well, most of the Bible is allegorical and it's symbolic. There's a deeper meaning when you read it, and it's very, very clear. And, if we really took the time to see where we're getting this, for example, there's been many times where Christ is clearly talking about a field and all this stuff, and we know that's not what He's talking about. We know He's talking about the world. So in this case, when we were looking at the events that are taking place, we also can see a deeper meaning with it that's taking place. Does it make sense?
I guess I have to compare it to how I understood it to your explanation.
Yeah. Well, it's not just my explanation.
Or mine.
No, yeah, I get it. So, that's a good point, by the way, and that's why we say the Bible becomes alive through tradition, right? So if we're just reading the Bible, we're not going to understand it. That's why holy tradition is very necessary, and this is kind of what the Orthodox Church really preaches. We're very big on this, and this is kind of one of the main difference between Orthodox and let's say Protestants, right? Who believe on Scripture alone. A lot of times when we think about like the difference between Orthodox Protestants, people say Mary or angels or something like that. Actually, tradition is probably the biggest difference, because if you say tradition, if they accept tradition, along with that would come Mary, because that's within the tradition. You see, like the tradition of our fathers and what they handed down to us. If you say tradition, angels would come with it, because that's part of the tradition that came along with it. When you start talking about scripture alone, it takes to, and I'm not just pointing fingers or whatever, but it goes down to my understanding versus what our fathers understood. So we're always, in the Orthodox Church, we're more interested about how our fathers and how the disciples understood it, rather than how we understand it. You see the difference? So tradition becomes alive because we are going by and kind of leaning on their understanding and saying they knew Christ better, so, and they lived a more holier life, so we trust their understanding. That's good. So now, notice how Christ is walking on the Sabbath, Saturday on the day of rest. This means that Christ is looking at it, especially on the day of, on the Sabbath, when we're also supposed to be reflecting on our life. You see? Today is like Sabbath is a day for us to think about our salvation. Now, since the disciples were hungry for what? It means salvation. You see? That means we have to be hungry for salvation as well, and reflect on our life and really say, you know what, more than anything, I need salvation. I have to have salvation. I will confess, I'll take Holy Communion, I'll go to liturgy. When you do this a couple of times, very easy, it can seem like burdensome, you know? There's a lot of things that's attractive about this world, right? A lot of things. And we can think of like a 1,000 things to do at this moment, right now. If we really like it, it's very easy to think of like better things to do. It's hot, we're tired, we got stuff to do, ain't nobody got time for this, right? But at the end of the day, if we are serious about our salvation, this is worth it. We may not feel like it every single day, or we may not see the result every single day, but over time, if we really compare ourselves when we are with God and reflecting on our life and working towards salvation, we will see how much it is worth it at the end when we win the gift of the kingdom of heaven. But we have to work for our salvation. We've got to be hungry. We've got to understand how important this is. We've got to understand that there's truly a different world to take. There's an actual kingdom of heaven that awaits. And all this work that we are putting in, all this exhaustion, all this being tired is paying off. And God is looking at us. He's hovering over us, right? And us being here is a reflection and manifestation of the fact that we are hungry for salvation. This guy's just hungry. Alright. So we talked about the Sabbath and how Moses received it. We said the disciples are hungry. Like I said, we talked about most of the stuff. So the disciples being hungry, this is symbolizing how the disciples were hungry for salvation, or the teachings of Christ. It's the same thing. Salvation, because we know about salvation because we heard the teachings of Christ. Yes, sir. This is your time.
I just don't understand the grain and the salvation. You said they were extremely hungry.
Yeah.
How would you compare that to salvation?
So here we're looking at like hunger for salvation, meaning you really want to be saved, right? So in the eyes of the Pharisees, they're breaking rules for grain because like they're not concerned about what people are going to say about them. They're not concerned about what other people are going to say or whatever. They're hungry. They're not like thinking about like the consequences. They're going for the grain. You see what I'm saying? But if we are really hungry for salvation, that's a very good question. If we are very hungry for salvation, we're not going to care about other things. Like, I should sleep. No, I'm not going to care about that. Oh, I got this thing to do. I'm not going to care about that. What are friends going to think? I'm not going to care about that. If I'm hungry for salvation, I will pursue God until the end. You see? I would keep going towards God. I don't care about what's going on. I don't care what people are going to think. I'm going to keep going for it. Why? Because I'm hungry. You see? That's the difference. And that's a very good question. That's the connection right there. Is that clear a little bit? Alright. We good to go? Because the disciples are hungry for salvation, on the day of the Sabbath, they go to the field to break off the heads of the grains. In Jewish culture, working during the Sabbath was forbidden. We already talked about this. The Pharisees, who saw themselves as the protector of the law, had tried to accuse the disciples of breaking the Jewish tradition. The Pharisees would have not contested the disciples had they not done anything. Here's the funny thing to me. Notice that the disciples or the Pharisees see themselves as like the fathers and the protectors and like the wise guys, right, of that community. And they feel like they have to honor and protect and really like, kind of defend the law of Moses, which is okay. But they're mad at the disciples because they started breaking the heads of the grains. Had they done nothing, they wouldn't have complained. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the enemy. Are you guys hearing me? We don't look at people, but the enemy is always angry when you do something. Think about being criticized. Now, there's constructive criticism. I'm glad I was practicing for like 3 minutes earlier saying constructive. It's a hard word. You'd be surprised. It's a very hard word. So, there's nothing wrong with constructive criticism. Nothing wrong with it, right? But sometimes, and you know if you're being criticized fairly or unfairly. Are you guys with me? Sometimes the enemy just criticizes you. Sometimes the enemy just criticizes you without having grounds. You guys know what I'm talking about? And you know the difference between the two. When you're being criticized, whenever you do something, but you're never criticized for not doing anything. Let me explain what I mean. These guys are the protectors, right? Are you guys with me? These guys are the protectors. Nobody's paying attention. Are you guys with me? Everybody gather your thoughts. Gather your thoughts. There you go. Now people are paying attention. These guys are the protectors, right? And they're supposed to be like the fatherly figure and the wise guys, and everybody's supposed to go to them, right? If the disciples were hungry, why didn't they provide food for them beforehand? Why didn't they think about this? Like, if they were really the protectors of the people and they really genuinely cared about the people, they should have prepared food for the Sabbath. So whenever people were hungry, they could say, hey, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath, but here's the food that we prepared. Eat our food. Right? That's a true protector. Now, we bring this point up, not to point at other people. Remember, the Bible is a mirror. We look at ourselves through the Bible. We should reflect on our own ability to criticize others. I'm sure everybody in this room has criticized somebody one way or the other. Especially in this room. Right? We criticize people, which there's nothing wrong with it. But how do we criticize people? How do we tell people their fault? Right? If we're just saying, oh, you are a horrible person, right? Without any justification, without telling them any solution, without giving them anything, we're becoming exactly like the Pharisees. We're not giving a solution. We're just beating on that person to break their spirit. Is that what Christ would have done? The issue is not about criticizing. The issue is about criticizing in a holy way. Look at Christ and the way that he was criticizing. I have two examples. Now, the Pharisees are very difficult people because they see themselves as holy. That's the issue. You see? If you don't see yourself as a sinner and as if like you need something from God, that's a problem. The Pharisees see themselves as perfect, so they don't see the need for Christ either. So Christ would criticize them all the time, but look how he did it. In Matthew chapter 23, verse 13, he said, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites," he says. That's pretty serious, right? 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 You see what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So, He's criticizing them. That's a pretty serious criticism. But look what he does next. He says, for you shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. So he's telling them what they're doing wrong. And he says, you won't go in yourselves and you don't let others enter either. So he's giving them what they should do. Like the Pharisees, they went to the disciples and said that this is insane. Now see, you need to get up. We're going back to that. I know, but we're going back to that. And say, la class. It don't matter. Or you want to remember? Oh, that is grimy. That's nothing. Oh.
No, I'll move right again.
That is pretty. Wow. Can we edit that? So notice what the Pharisees are doing, right? They said, like, the disciples are hungry. They gotta eat something, right? So when they go and they break the heads off the grains, are you guys with me?
Yeah.
When they go and break the heads off the grains, it's not like they're telling them, hey, you can't eat, like, you can't do that because it's Sabbath, but here's what you should do. Instead of saying that, they just told them, don't eat, you can't eat, that's it. And they're just beating on them. You see what I'm saying? When Christ is criticizing the Pharisees, he said, you've done this, but this is what you should have done. You've done this, but this is what you should have done. So what is Christ trying to get them to do? He's trying to get them to be better. Do you see what I'm saying? He's trying to improve them. If they listen to his advice, that's true advice. That's the formula for advice. If they listen, they can be better. If they don't listen, that's on their own. Let's look at one more example. What's our way to teachers of religious law and you Pharisees? Hypocrites. For you're so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees. Criticism. Pretty harsh. But look what he says later. First, wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will be clean too. Matthew chapter 23, verse 25 to 26. So here, Christ is again giving them a solution. Whenever you talk to someone, I don't care if it's your brother, I don't care if it's a friend, I don't care if it's someone you barely know, and you feel the need to give them advice, advice has two things within it. Number one, what they did wrong, and number two, how they should get better. If you're not telling someone, if you're just telling them the negative things, you're becoming an enemy. You're breaking their spirit. Or you're becoming a hater. In today's lingo, I heard people saying outside. That's what it is. That's not Christianity. If you're always telling them great things about themselves, you're amazing, you're great, wow. You're being fake. Nobody's perfect. Right? If you really care about each other, tell each other your faults. But when you do it, tell them the negative and then how they should improve. You see, that's what Christ did. He saw an opportunity, this person would be better. He really cared about that person. It's not like they were just hating on him and just trying to step on him. No, he really cared about them. The Pharisees. Because they could do so much better. Here's how you do it. He's telling them. There's a negative in there. But he's also telling them how they can improve. If we're not doing that, let's just stay quiet. Let's just stay quiet. David eats sacred loaves of bread. Oh no, yes. David eats sacred loaves of bread. So now Christ is responding to this criticism. And it's important to also understand how Christ responds back, right? So now let's reverse the role. Imagine you're being criticized. Imagine you're being criticized. And you're being criticized in a very unfair way. And somebody's just saying like negative things, you suck, you're horrible, you're this, you're that, you're this. Notice how Christ responds. He's still not like going down to their level. Like, oh yeah, well, he's not doing it. He's still responding in a very wise way. The true wisdom is seen in Christ, not in the Pharisees. He's responding in a way that if they listen, they can still learn. And he's responding back in a way that they can't really argue with him. If you guys see most of like the conversation with Christ and the Pharisees, at the end of the conversation, they had nothing else to say, so they plot to kill him. Because they can't, like, the answer is full. He's not emotional, he's not like angry, like if you guys see like when people get mad, he doesn't take it personal, he tells them the answer, and it's a full answer. It's an answer that they can't respond to. The only thing left is, let's kill him. You see? But he's responding in a good way. So, in 1 Samuel chapter 21, we get the story of King David when he's running away from Saul. You guys remember that? Old Testament? David! What happened in the story? What happened? Saul was chasing David.
David ends up actually, like Saul fell asleep or something. He cuts off a piece of his garment and tells him, I want to.
Yeah. So that's later on. So what happens is, general thing, Saul is the king at the time. People favor David. Saul is jealous. I'm paraphrasing here. Saul is David, so he tries to kill David. So David has to escape, and he's on the run. So, right? Now, in this, while he's running, while he's in exile, he finds a house, and he hides in there. But he's extremely hungry. His people are hungry. They just get in. They're like, oh my gosh, we're on the run. This crazy king is trying to kill us, right? Like, but we gotta eat food. And then the priest at the time tells him, look, man, the only food I have is the holy bread, which is reserved for the priest. I can't give you that. It's for the priest. David is like, we're about to die. We gotta eat something, right? So give us the food. So they ate the food. What did they do? They broke the law. They broke the law. Christ is telling this story that they are very much aware of to the Pharisees. What is he saying? Don't forget about the intent of the rule. That's what we're talking about. Rules are not bad. Notice, Christ is not arguing about whether or not it's right for David to do this. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the intent of the law. You can't give somebody salvation if they're dead. Right? Yes, sir.
So David was running away from Saul?
Yeah.
Was that the fella?
So we didn't like which fella?
No, fill in the blank.
Fill in the which fella? Eating the bread that was meant for the priests. That's the fella. Eating the bread that was meant for the priests. So Christ is telling them to show them, remember what is important. Like, you guys are missing the point. Missing the point. And I love reading the Bible because it reminds me. I know I do this a lot. I'm a felon when it comes to this, right? Because I forget what the intent of the rule is. And whenever we forget about the intent of the rule, I don't care if you're following it or not following it, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Whenever we meet people on the street, whenever we're talking to people in the church, whenever we're having a conversation with anybody, I don't care who it is, it could be your friend, it could be your mom, whatever, don't forget about the intent of Christianity, which is love. It's about getting each person closer to salvation. So if we're so much focused on like the rules and forget the intent, you missed the point. You missed the point. Christ first reminds the Pharisees that priests have been able to work in the temple during the Sabbath. So this is the second point. Christ is making 2 points. First thing is, hey, you guys remember David? He ate the bread that was meant for the priest. First point. So he broke the law. Second point. Remember, the priests were able to work in the synagogue, right? So they were able to work during that time when there was their day of service. So here again, we see that people are working. So you mean to tell me that my disciples can't break the head off the grains because they're hungry? What kind of hypocrites are you guys? That's what he's telling me. You guys are hypocrites. What matters? Their life? You want them to pass out? You want them to die? Or you want them to eat and then worship? You see? Don't miss the point. Don't miss the point. That's what he's telling them. Now, in this case, when we talk about symbolism, he's saying salvation is important. Salvation is important. And all the rules that we have, which is great. I have no problems. Let's add more rules if we want to. But those rules should get us closer to Christ. If we're missing the point, and we're preventing people from getting to Christ because we're forgetting about all these rules that we have, we miss the point. The rules are not the problem. The intent of the rule is. If we're forgetting about the intent of the rule, that's the issue. Again, the rules are not what are the problem. Notice here, Christ, and let me emphasize that, just to make sure for some people. Notice how Christ never had a problem with any of the rules that are there. It's not that Christ is arguing against the law. He's not there arguing against the law. He's there arguing against the intent of the law. Meaning the intent of the law is to get that person closer to God. I can't emphasize that enough. Again, as insane as it is when we talk about Pharisees, it's very easy to see and say, isn't it easy to see? Isn't it? It's very easy to see, right? Very easy to see. As easy it is to see that the Pharisees are crazy, that rhymed. It really did. As crazy as it is, right? We tend to do that all the time when we're preventing people from coming into the church. Like, please, everybody. Yes. Ask.
I didn't hear when you said the intent of the law is to God.
The intent of the law is to get the person closer to God. Closer to God. So, the reason why I keep bringing this up is, whenever we're, especially in the church, on church premise, right? We begin to talk to people, and especially in the discussion of YOTC and service and all that stuff, we've got to be extra cautious of how we approach people. Are you guys with me? Are you guys with me? Especially those of us who are in service. We've got to be very cautious when we approach people, because we have guidelines and we have rules and we have regulations, which is all great. But these rules are written at the end of the day to get the person closer to God. You guys see what I'm talking about? Especially those of us who are in service. So when we're approaching people and saying, this little box you didn't fill out, so don't come back. Well, we don't do that. But I hope we don't do that. But you guys see what I'm talking about, right? Or when we're approaching people and saying, hey man, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And then that is resulting in that person walking away from God. We have failed. The good thing is not to check a whole bunch of boxes. This is why, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, this is why a church is not an institution. Right? In an institution, you care about the institution moving forward. That's what you're concerned about. The church cares about the individual and making sure that that person is going to salvation, is making sure that that person is getting salvation. That's what the church is concerned about. An institution is concerned about the institution. And in the midst of the way, if a few people go there and there, well, the institution is growing. That's what's important. The church, the individual, each person matters. Right? So that's what we should be focused on. And whenever we miss that, we miss the target. We become the Pharisees. We're doing exactly like what they did. Except they were talking about grace and we were talking about saving, like salvation. You know? So ours is worse. Let's keep going. How are we doing on time? What does that mean? Let's keep going. He says there is one here who's greater than the temple. You guys hear me? There is one here who's greater than the temple. They're having a conversation with Christ, and they're trying to debate with him about laws of the law of Moses. The irony, right? Like, who gave him those laws? You know what I mean? Like, that's the end of the conversation right there. Like, drop the mic and just walk off, right? Like, he gave him the laws. So don't come back to Christ and try to argue with him about the laws. Why? Because even though they're in front of him, they can't see him spiritually. You see this? Even though they're there, they can't see him spiritually. Again, the issue that we have. There are days, sometimes, that we could come into the church, spend an entire day here, and get nothing out of it. Right? True or false? It's true. There's sometimes you come to the church, sometimes we talk about politics, sometimes we talk about friends, sometimes we talk about things that happen at work, and then by the time we go home, there's nothing. We didn't get a chance to see Christ, to understand Christ. This is, again, the problem when we are in the presence of Christ, but we are unable to see Him. We're in the presence of Christ, but because we're distracted and we're blinded, and because of whatever the issue might be, we're unable to see Christ, even though we're standing right in front of Him. Even though we're standing right in front of Him. Obviously, Christ was talking about Himself when He said, there's someone greater than the temple. Again, while the Pharisees are concerned about consecrating the building at which they worship, they desecrated the one who they worship. That was pretty wise. That was sweet. You can use it for your tweet. Tweet about it. It's a tweet. You can get it. They desecrated the one who they worship. That's very awesome.
I'm still desecrated. I'm asking for it.
Look at consecrated. Use that as your basis.
Okay.
And then add the day instead of con.
The one that they worship.
Jeez. Notice what Christ is doing here. This is not random. Right? So they're arguing about like Sabbath. And they're saying, but they broke the grains and we can't do that. He's like, there's one higher than the temple. So again, like most of the time when Christ is talking, it seems kind of random. If you guys really like read it and you guys don't know the content of like how he's using context of how he's using it. But this is not random. He's extremely upset, right? So he's letting them know he's invoking his name. He's saying there's one higher than the temple, meaning you offended me. You offended me. You think I don't know about these laws? You think I don't care about the laws? I care. I gave him the laws. I gave him what he needs to know. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you, this is what's more important. And the Pharisees are just not listening. You guys with me? And then he gets into the meaning of Scripture. Again, this is what we've been talking about. The Sabbath was made a commandment because the Israelites were committing sin. We already talked about this. Again, the Sabbath was not a time to stop working. It was a time to stop doing sin. They couldn't stop sinning. So they needed a day to stop sinning. Right? It was a day of reflection. It was a day to see what they were doing wrong. Okay, let's keep going. Jesus heals on the Sabbath. Let's wrap it up because it seems like everybody's like, I'm tired. I'm going to speed through this and then we're going to go. You're the only one who feels that way. That's sweet. How about you feel that way? Jesus goes to the synagogue. This is the second section. I'm going to read it real fast. And then we'll do this. Then Jesus went over to the synagogue, where he noticed a man with a deformed hand. The Pharisees asked Jesus, does the law permit a person to work by healing the Sabbath? This is a continuation of the Sabbath discussion, right? So here, the disciples are bringing out the grains. Here, there's a sick man, and they bring him to him, right? They were hoping he would say yes, so they could bring charges against him. And he answered, if you had a sheep that fell into the well on the Sabbath, wouldn't you work to pull it out? Of course you would. And how much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Yes, the law permits a person to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, hold your hand out. So the man held his hand out, and it was restored just like the other one. And the Pharisees called a meeting to plot how to kill Jesus again. That's the only thing they can do at this point. he proved him wrong. Let's look at the entire section. So now he's in the synagogue, right? What's the first thing he notices? A man with a deformed head. Whenever Christ, right? Whenever we go into the synagogue or the church, right? Christ sees our deformities. Are you guys with me? Christ sees our deformities. Because he can see our deformity, we don't have to hide it. He can see it. Like, we don't have to front whenever we're with it. Like, we can lie to each other, that's okay. Like, you shouldn't lie, but okay, like, if you lie to each other, you lie to each other. But when you appear before Christ, be 100%. Understand you have weaknesses. Understand that you are deformed. Right? Because, like, unless we go to Christ, accept the fact that we are deformed, we cannot get healed. Until we recognize that there's something wrong with us. And unless we're coming to the church with the understanding that we need to be healed, we're never going to get better. We're never going to see the need to get better. Going back to being hungry for salvation, right? The need for, the experience of feeling like that feeling of hunger for salvation comes from understanding that you're sick. If you have a person who's really, really sick, and he's told that there's medication for him, like, in a different country somewhere, in like very weird hut or whatever, you don't think he would go? He would go if he knows he's sick. And if he wants to live. And the same way, if we understand that we're spiritually deformed and really, really sick to understand this, and we're going to seek Christ, but we need to go towards Him, being like 100%, we're real with God, right? We don't have to hide our deformities. Let's expose them so He can heal us. Notice, Christ also sees our deformities, and that's the thing. The first thing He notices is a guy with a deformed hand. That's the first thing He noticed. He said, wow, here's a deformed man. Now the Pharisees, this is how you know they're wicked, and this is how you know they're not for real. They go to Christ and they say, is it okay to heal a man on the Sabbath? This is a loaded question. You know what a loaded question is? You can't say yes, you can't say no. If he said, yes, it is okay to heal somebody on the Sabbath, guess what they're going to say? Broke the law of Moses, against the law, you got to hang him. You got to kill him. That's what they're going to say. If he says, no, you can't heal anybody on the Sabbath, they're going to say he doesn't care about human beings. He has no heart. You see? So now they're messing with him. They're trying to put him in the corner. This is how you know if somebody is genuine or not. You know because of the way they approach you, what they say to you. Now, because Christ knew their motives, how He responds is amazing. This is the thing. I love studying the Bible because you get to study how you should respond to people. Even when it's not out of love, right? Like, if that was me at that point, I'm like, how dare you? You know, you get mad, you get pissed off, right? You say stuff that you should never say. You say things, like, I say things I shouldn't say when I'm happy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let alone mad. So like, this is why the example of Christ, because He gives someone an answer that they can't argue with. And that's why they have to plot to kill Him. Because, like, they can't say anything to Him. What's His answer? Okay, let's use an analogy, right? Let's say one of, like, your animals that you care for goes into the well. And once he goes into the well, wouldn't you go down there and save him? Right? And you know, like, you can't argue with that. He's like, exactly. So if one of my children needs help, I'm going to save him. Now, the story that he's telling is also an analogy for what he was about to do on the cross. The sheep that he's talking about, or the animal that he's talking about, is Adam, or mankind. And the fact that he fell into the well, he's talking about the well of Hades, where Adam, because of the sin that he committed, fell into the Hades. When he's saying going into the well and rescuing him, he's talking about himself going to the well of Hades and rescuing Adam by dying on the cross. And of course, the Sabbath is now a Sunday, and he resurrected on Sunday. So yes, in fact, the Sabbath is a good day to save people's lives. That's what he's telling them. The Sabbath is a perfect time to do this, because he's telling them, I'm about to do the same thing. You guys see that? You guys see what's going on? Christ responds by employing an analogy of a shepherd and a sheep. Wanted to fill in the blanks. Christ reasserts the man is much more valuable than sheep. The last fill in the blank.
You said shepherds and the sheep for the first one?
Yeah. More, and then the second one is more valuable than a sheep. And of course, Jesus does go ahead and heal the man. How are we doing?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So like when he talked about the well of Hades, like Hades was like referring to hell, right?
No.
Or was not?
No. So Hades is a place where it's temporary, just like the Garden of Eden. And Hades and the Garden of Eden will close, it will be destroyed at Judgment Day. And hell will be open, just like the kingdom of heaven will be open. And that is a place of permanent, place where we stay forever.
So Hades is like in limbo, like a state of limbo, where you're not in heaven or in hell, you're just somewhere in between.
I don't want to say that because there's other meanings associated with limbo, but like it's kind of like the Catholic understanding of purgatory. So, but this is just a place where when we go, when we die, we go, and this kind of where we stay there.
Like you're about to go home.
It's like you're in the waiting room and you're just gonna be in the waiting room until you're called.
So in the Gospel of John chapter 3, it talks about that our spirit is like the wind where it blows, it goes wherever it blows, right? So if our actions like are mimicking that of somebody who's going to go to hell, right? It's going to go in that direction. It's blowing there. So the day of judgment is to recognize their work of doing evil and to give them a permanent location. So I don't, I want to be very careful of of saying yes or no because we're talking about theological stuff. So, but that is the idea. So because of their actions, it's like a wind which blows in whatever direction. And even the Bible says like people who don't believe in God or whatever, like they're judging on their self. The judgment has already been given. So like on Judgment Day, that is to recognize the work that they have done, which is blowing in the direction of hell. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Other questions?